TV Women's Writers Fest powered by Colors. Thank you for joining us today for our panel on finding motherhood. Now, the narrative around motherhood in India has seen a gradual shift over the past decade. It's no longer about bathing your picture perfect baby covered in soap suds or watching over them lovingly as they sleep soundly. That's what ads want us to believe. The conversation now is no longer about breastfeeding or which diapers are better to buy. Women today are, in fact, questioning the very pedestal on which motherhood is put in India, also starting debates on various aspects like mental health, self care, and work life balance. Leading this conversation from the front are women writers who have used blogs and books to chronicle the journey of motherhood into a sisterhood where women can find support and answers to a lot of questions they were never encouraged to ask. Today, we have with us two such writers who are here to discuss what exactly does motherhood mean for 21st century modern women. Please welcome Dr. Farah Adam Mukadam and Zehra Naqvi. Before we start the panel, a little bit of introduction to both our panelists. Dr. Farah Adam Mukadam is a family physician and mother of two living in Bangalore. She is the author of the book Newborns and New Mums, The Urban Woman's Guide to Life After Childbirth. Zehra Naqvi is a hands-on mother and an independent journalist who has spent a decade writing on literature, gender, and socio-political issues. Zehra is a quadruple gold medalist in journalism from Aligarh Muslim University. She is also the author of an upcoming book named The Reluctant Mother. Welcome, both of you. So to
Thank
get
you,
this
Yami.
conversation, so to get this conversation started, the first thing right off the bat, I want to know from you why a book on motherhood. Who would like to go first? Farah?
Uh, Hi. I wrote this book on motherhood because after my son was born, I was totally clueless as to what to do. I had a lot of breastfeeding issues, and the main issue that I faced was, in spite of being a doctor, there was nothing that guided me that it is going to be such a roller coaster after childbirth. And honestly speaking, being a doctor, I feel puts you at a bit of a disadvantage for the simple reason that doctors take you for granted. Like, isko to sab pata hai. She knows what, they feel they might be stepping on a line if, they give me too much advice. And as a mother, you're totally sleep deprived, you're exhausted, you don't know where your next meal is coming from. So that's why I decided to write. And after I succeeded in breastfeeding my second child, I got the confidence that the hurdles that I faced with the first one were conquerable. I was able to surmount all of them. And that's why I wrote this book. And I got in science, I got in traditions, I got in medicine, and I got in anecdotal evidence, not only from my own life, but also of my patients who had a very difficult postpartum period, like the first 6 months right after childbirth. And I wanted to speak about body image, weight loss, which is such a big part of the culture that is going on right now, like the bouncing back and getting into your jeans, your getting into shape, like circle is also a shape, the shape that we are after we give birth to our kids. And we want to look like virginal brides, right after childbirth, which is not something that is possible. And I felt that this is where women were just sinking. They were just sinking. They didn't know, they didn't have much lactation support in India. Lactation support is quite, there's a big void over there. So I just took from my own experiences and the experiences of my patients, and I wrote this book. And it took almost 3 years to get everything together, and then COVID struck. So I had a huge problem there. But yeah, women are resonating with what I have written, and because it's coming from a very honest place, that it is raw, it is unfiltered. That's where I wrote this book from.
Zehra, raw and unfiltered is, I think, something you would also associate your book with, right?
Exactly. That's what I was also thinking, and you mentioned it. So exactly, this is what my book is about. It is an honest book. It's a memoir. It's about my own life. And as to your question as to why to write about motherhood, I didn't really know I was writing a book because I started writing a blog in 2013, which is a year after my son was born. And for me, motherhood was, there was a great upheaval. I was really young. I married really young. I was 23, and when you're in love, I was in love, and I wanted to get married, and you have all those fantasies in your head about Shah Rukh Khan type romances and all that. And so I married the man that I loved, and I also had my dream career. I came from a small town to Delhi to become a journalist. I literally rebelled against my family, which, in Aligarh, I'm from Aligarh Muslim University, as you read out. So everybody wanted me to go into academics. And so this is all the background of what was happening in my life. And suddenly, I'm a mother, suddenly I'm expecting, and I wasn't ready for it. I was only 24, and I wasn't ready for it. And everybody expects me to be really happy. They expect me to be overjoyed, and I'm not feeling it. I'm feeling like there's so many other things I want to do. And then I had a really difficult pregnancy, and after that, other things happened, which you would read in the book about what happened. So I was in this really low phase of my life, and I started blogging about it because I wanted to speak my truth. Because everywhere, as you just said in your introduction, that all you see is women bathing babies in all these soapy bathtubs and you're hugging your child, and that's there. It's not like it's not there. Of course you love your child, but then there are no ads which are talking about how frustrated you are when the child is crying all night long and is going to tear out your hair. There's going to be no ad about that. There are moments of yes, my baby is the best thing that happened to me, but there are also moments when you're so angry, you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that happened to me. And nobody is going to say that, and nobody's going to allow you to say that. Because when I started blogging, I started getting messages from women who I didn't know. They were strangers, not just from India, from across the world, because the blogosphere has people across the world. So they said that, you're so courageous to be saying all these things out loud, and we would never say them, but we feel them. That's what they said. All of these messages, they said, we feel the same way, but we can't say it because we'll be branded bad mothers. So the thing is, this is why I wrote, this is why I ultimately felt that this should be a book. And actually, the idea that this should be a book was given to me by another blogger. She's from Canada, Kathy, and I've never met her, but she's the one responsible for this book, because she said you should make this into a book. It's a great story, and not many people will actually accept to having all these complicated and conflicted feelings about motherhood. It's not a bed of roses, so to speak. So let's talk about how there are these gray areas even in something like motherhood. And that's why I wrote this book.
Absolutely. We need to talk more about the gray areas in motherhood. So coming back to you, Farah, I read somewhere that you also work towards providing breastfeeding and postpartum support to new mothers. Why do you feel that these aspects of motherhood are left out when we talk to girls and women about motherhood?
Okay, so the problem with breastfeeding in India is that one is our granny generation, the mothers of the new mothers. They came about, they were young mothers when the peak of formula was going on. So many of them don't have enough inputs to give to their bahus and to their daughters. The second thing is that we do not have IBCLC, which is the International Board of Lactation Consultants over here, although it is upcoming in India. So, who takes care of the lactation part? Is it the pediatrician? Is it the gynecologist? It's a gray area again over there. And considering how fast you need to exit the gynecologist and the pediatrics office, there is not much time, and lactation support needs a lot of time. You need like a half an hour, and there is a lot of lobby. There's a big lobby of formula going on, especially with the pediatricians. So whenever there's a hiccup, formula, that's the answer. And many mothers, a lot of postpartum depression as well as a lot of guilt is associated with not being able to breastfeed. You know, I was not able to breastfeed for the simple reason that I did not get enough support. I had terrible nipple cracks, the works, mastitis, everything under the sun I had, and I was not able to breastfeed my son. And even now, when he gets this allergic bronchitis, I feel guilty, in spite of writing this book, in spite of seeing the challenges, knowing in retrospect what all challenges I faced and what all help I could have had. in spite of that, I still feel that mom guilt is still there. And that mom guilt is this niggling thing which does not leave you, probably ever. That I could have breastfed, I could have tried harder. And the postpartum support over here is more like taunts. That postpartum support that I see in households in India, it comes in the form of a taunt from your mother or your mother-in-law. It will be like, ये और लड़कियों को तो कुछ नहीं आता है. I'm speaking in Hindi. I hope that's okay. ये लड़कियों को तो कुछ नहीं आता. आजकल की लड़की, that आजकल की लड़की is such a negative way of putting it. And it is really learning on the job. Motherhood is really learning on the job. You make a mistake, you learn. Probably you never learn also. So that support needs to be done. So I started an Instagram channel, a YouTube channel, and I wrote this book. And I'm available on online consultations also. And we also started this Facebook group for postpartum support in India, because in my journey, in the last 1 year after my book was released, I came across so many women talking about their own postpartum depression, and how they had to seek help with the US groups, because they couldn't find any groups in India. So we are running all of those things. And that is one step towards helping mothers and supporting moms. And the most frustrating part of motherhood for any new mother is, when they come to the doctor's office, when they come to me for a non-related problem, not related to lactation or childbirth, because I'm a family physician, they'd come to me and I'd send their family members out, and I'd just ask them who's bothering at home. And more often than not, they would just break into tears, because they're like, how did you know? I'm just like drowning. It's pretty bad for a new mother, because they get too much of advice. And this generation is pretty strong headed. We don't like to hear things. It's not a step up for us, it's a step down for us. We are like the useless intern after we give birth. Earlier generation, it was a step up for them. Okay, she's fertile, she can give birth, or now she is the bahu of the house. But for us, it's a step down. Arey, I was this achieving person, and now I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. There's a person over here. That's my daughter. Please excuse her. Yeah, they
She's
know
always
absolutely
welcome.
nothing.
She's welcome to. We welcome her inputs as well.
Yeah. So the thing is, we are like this hopeless intern. We have no idea what to do, and all we get to hear is, "ये लोग लड़की आजकल की लड़कियों को तो कुछ भी नहीं आता है." So that's where I feel a professional who has gone through these things, reaching out to the new mothers, that really gives them the courage to go on, and it really inspires them.
True, that's absolutely true. What are your thoughts on this, Zehra? You have written a memoir that offers an alternate take on motherhood. Why do you feel that women need to share their personal stories of motherhood with other women?
That is such a good question, because I was so alone. I'm relating so much to what Dr. Farah is talking about in her book, postpartum depression. I had zero idea of what postpartum depression is, and everybody else had zero idea of why this girl who was just given birth to an amazing child, she's not happy. Why is she not happy? Why? How can you not be happy? And I never actually had anybody to tell me to seek help. And as you very rightly said, that we can't, in a sense, women like us who are headstrong and we are career oriented, and we want to live our lives our way, we have very little by way of support to turn to. If we turn to traditional means of support, there's very little to support us, because the way that our mothers or our mothers-in-law lived their lives, we don't want to live our lives like that. Their motivations or their needs were different from ours. And in my case, because you asked about stories, it was only after I finally got onto social media and I started meeting like-minded women that I actually got some kind of support. And this was like years later. Like, my son is now, he's 9 years old. So this was years later. And at the time when the 3 years, my book talks about the first 3 years after my son was born. And I went through a lot of tumult personally, because, and I was young, my husband was young, we were both in our 20s, and we were pretty much clueless about how this whole adulting thing works. We were like, we're in love, we're going to get married, it's going to work out. And we were pretty much clueless about how raising a family is like, what it is like. And then so this is, my book is about a lot of other things, about not just motherhood, it's also about marriage. What happens to your love? What happens to that romance when the child comes into the picture? What about intimacy? It's nobody talks about physical relationships and intimacy in marriage. You're supposed to only want to be a mother, and once you're a mother, oh, okay, now I don't want anything else. But you want, and if a woman talks about intimacy, I want physical intimacy with my partner, I want him as much as I wanted him before childbirth, then nobody, so you are not supposed to say these things out loud, because then you are, what kind of a woman are you? And secondly, if you do say them, then it's like, oh my god, bachche mein dil lagao, why are you so much crazy about your husband? Ho gaya ab ye sab pyar mohabbat purani baatein and all. And then your career. And for me, my career went for a toss totally, because my pregnancy was very difficult. I was throwing up like 6 7 times a day. I had pregnancy migraines, things like that, and I had to quit my job, which I really loved. And again, we after the child was born, we realized that because I was not working, there was one person working, there were more finances, our finances were sort of skewed, and there's a child to take care of, and everything is sort of falling apart. You've just carefully created this dream life, and suddenly a child comes into the picture, and you're clueless about how to do everything, because what your parents did is not what you want to do. You don't have any precedent for the way that you want to live your life, and nobody's talking about finances and things like that. So my life went totally haywire. I had to move back to my hometown. My husband was in Delhi, then he moved abroad, and we kept waiting for me to move abroad, and things happened, and that's the whole story about. So why it's important for women to tell their stories is that we don't spend our lives in isolation thinking I'm some sort of freak. When you meet other people who've had similar experiences, maybe not exactly the same, but similar experiences, people who have similar needs, people who have similar wants, then you feel like you have a sisterhood, you have a fraternity. Stories help us to feel that we're not alone in this. They help us to cope. They help us to, listening to someone else's story, it gives you a kind of relief. It gives you comfort, it gives you solace, and it helps you to figure out, okay, she also went through this. Similarly, how did she cope? So, okay, maybe I have this kind of roadmap how to cope, because the previous generation and ours is so different in what we want. We can't follow their roadmaps. So when we start telling true stories, then you don't think, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. Why am I having all these thoughts about my baby? I should be so overjoyed. Why is this happening? Why am I not happy? I'm a horrible person. But you're not. When other people tell you, no, it's normal. You have this roller coaster thing. Sometimes you're very happy, sometimes you're not happy. And then you think, okay, fine, yes, maybe I'm not so bad after all. It's normal. This is gonna get better with time. So yeah, are so important, true stories especially.
Now, Zehra pointed out this at this really important point of how women are not expected to talk about the need for physical intimacy, the need for care. So coming to you, Farah, why do you feel it's important to write more or talk more about issues like physical intimacy after motherhood or mental health or self-care with younger women who are not yet married?
The thing is, our concept of motherhood is a little skewed right now, more so because of social media. The social media is painting a very beautiful picture, like Beyonce. She gave birth and then she bounced back, and then she did what is that festival? She did this music festival and stuff, and Coachella. Yeah, she's in Coachella, and then Kareena Kapoor. She's back, and she's back in the movies. So this is where we are setting up very high standards, very unrealistic and unattainable and unnecessary standards for mothers. And when we talk about mental health, we talk about things which are just swept under the rug, such as there are suicide cases. So okay, she's a bad mother, she killed herself or she killed her child. She's labeled as a bad mother even after she has passed. And someone's life is at stake. Someone's entire family can just be like bikhar jati hai. The mother really holds it all together. And when we talk about post baby bedrooms, I have an entire chapter on that. There's a lot of myths about contraception after childbirth, which is completely different from before childbirth, the contraception. And I talk about this birth control, and I talk about we need to talk about this the mental health is especially important in this day and age of being surrounded by all these it's a sham. It's basically a sham. Instagram is a sham. Mothers, like, this is how I bounced back. They'll have a before and an after picture. But when they were in the before time, they were not on Instagram, they were not as active, please remember that. And here, we're sitting with a pint of ice cream and wallowing and in self pity that, oh my god, I'm never going to look like that, I'm never going to bounce back. You're not a ball, dear. You're a human being. You and your body is not meant to look like that forever. There will be stretch marks, there will be a little bit of sagging pooch, and that is perfectly normal. And in normalizing that's where, books like Zehra's book and, my book come into the picture, that your body will change. And there's actually a scientific reason for that. The waist to hip, for example, the waist to hip ratio is lower for a woman, and it is more attractive because it's a sign of virginity. It's not exactly a sign of virginity, it just shows that she has not given birth. And your waist broadens after childbirth. And that's where we need to know that this is how I'm going to look, and I might as well accept it and move on, with my life, rather than, just keep go towards an eating disorder and drive myself crazy with workouts, and ignore ignore breastfeeding, because the breast might sag after breastfeeding, where when that is one of the most important gifts that you can give your own body and your child. So when we speak about all this from a medical perspective, it gives many mothers, who are just so very confused, who are just so very confused by all the information. There's a like a big flood of information that we keep getting, and all of that is so conflicting. The information that we get from our parents, from our in-laws, the information that we get online, the information that we get from the West, and the information that we get in India, it's all so very conflicting. So when you have, like, say, a doctor speaking about these issues, that this is okay, and there are a lot of it's not a job. But on the other hand, there is a lot of comparison that keeps going. So that's where, a professional speaking about this makes a huge difference to the mind. Okay, this is where I need to listen to this. So that's why I felt including these chapters about body image, about postpartum, sorry, child birth control after childbirth. These things needed to be included because these were the pressing problems many women were facing. In fact, post-baby bedrooms, there is a lot of confusion about things like intrauterine contraceptive devices and things like that. And I wanted to clear that out because women were missing out on such important medical care. And all they were going towards, ghar ke nuske and trying out different methods and having unwanted pregnancies. So that's why I
Farah,
decided to include.
sorry. So, Farah, you've raised this very important point as well about the standards of beauty that are kept similar for women who are not moms and women who are moms. Our bodies are different. And yet we are put to the same standard as social media stars, actors, and women who are not mothers. So, coming to you, Zara, how do you feel can we change this conversation and help people accept that a woman's body is not going to be the same as after childbirth? However, that doesn't mean that she is unattractive. It's the standards that need to change.
Again, it's all about the truth, because as Dr. Farah, she just mentioned that we're all giving all this rosy picture on social media. So when you start showing the truth, when you actually show real bodies of women after childbirth, and you say that, well, this is how it's supposed to be. This is the ideal. Let's just talk about the ideal. Changing your body, changing is normal. What we talk about, normalization of things. So when we're going to talk about, the more we talk about reality, the more we talk about truth, the more we can change norms. As long as we keep holding ourselves to this some extreme ideal of how film stars bodies look like, or how pop stars bodies look like, then it's not going to change. Real people need to sort of put pictures of their bodies and talk about, well, this is how it is, this is normal, this is how it's a woman body is supposed to change, and you're still beautiful, this is also beautiful, that's beautiful, this is beautiful. There's no single definition of beauty, like you've got 7 colors in a rainbow, so you can have, say, 700 different types of beautiful. Doesn't have to be one kind of beautiful always. Yeah.
Absolutely. Stay with me, Zara. I also wanted to ask you that your book comes with a certain rawness, a certain pain that you have channeled in while writing it. So, when you write with such honesty, do you fear upsetting people closer to you? Do you fear that one day when your child will grow up and read what you wrote about your journey as a mother, it would impact your relationship with them?
That's is actually true, and I do at times fear that. But in the at the end of the book, I have a letter which is addressed to him when he reads it. But even not just about the letter. If you read the book, it's not a book which is it's not a mother who hates her child. It's a mother who's conflicted, and hopefully, when he's old enough to read the book, he would read the beautiful moments as well as the difficult moments, and he would be able to discern that it's a roller coaster thing. And now that you've asked this question, I have a sort of reply ready for my son, which I've been sort of practicing in my head, for when the day comes. So I've been practicing in my head about this, about how when he was young and he didn't want to go to school and he used to cry a lot and he used to throw a lot of fits. But school's a good thing, it's a great thing. And when he grows up later, he would realize that. So it's the same with mama. She was young and she couldn't understand, what was happening to her. It was a new thing. So she was crying and throwing fits and all that. So it can happen even with adults. And that's the thing I have. That's the story or sort of explanation I have in my mind, should he ask me. But I'm hoping that, we, through being honest with our children, we can also help them to understand that life is not about black and white, good and bad. There are so many gray areas that exist in relationships, not just as between mothers and children, but in all kinds of relationships, between siblings, between spouses, between friends. You fight, sibling rivalry is so prominent, but even so, you love your siblings, right? And spouses fight a lot, but you love each other. Friends fight. Sometimes friends stop talking to each other for a long time, and they have fights, but then you sort of come back to each other and you're there for each other. So relationships are not black and white. And by being honest with our children about our feelings, we would put ourselves off the pedestal that parents are not gods. Parents are human beings. We also make mistakes, and we need to be transparent with our children so that they understand that life is about making mistakes but learning from them and moving on. And things change all the time. What my mother experienced is not what I experienced. So it's not necessarily what my son would experience, or what, if I had a daughter, what she would experience. So I think that because of honesty, initially, yes, we are upsetting the norms or the way that the world looks at things, but eventually we will be helping our children to understand the value of being truthful with their own children, and the value of not putting people on pedestals but understanding each other as human beings. And I think eventually that will be better for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Coming to you, Farah, your book addresses a lot of traditional practices like belly binding, head bath, postpartum confinement for 40 days. You even write about how women shouldn't use tampons or menstrual cups after immediately giving birth to a child. Did you ever feel that since some of these practices are not very popular among women today, you might receive some negative feedback from your readers? Or were you very confident that your readers would be able to connect with your reasoning?
Actually, the problem, I decided to include all of these topics in my book for the simple reason that we Indians, we are at the cusp of modernization as well as traditionalism. We still haven't crossed that hurdle. And the urban woman, that's why in my introduction you said it's the urban woman's guide. This book is the urban woman's guide to life after childbirth. So what happens is we are very confused. Ki, tampon use karna hai ki nahi? Menstrual cup is the new in thing, whereas women don't understand that your uterus is opened, your cervix is opened, and you cannot put things inside there, and you have to use uh, a sanitary napkin. And other things like belly binding. If you go online, when I was researching, I would see what all is there online, and you would see these blogs, and many of them were coming from the West. And the belly binding, what happens is, I'm sorry, I do not want to badmouth the West, and I don't want to generalize, but what I see is they will take one practice and they will blow it out of proportion. Like haldi, for example, it's all the rage now. even though we know how turmeric or haldi is used, like, in a pinch in our food. Not, you don't make milkshakes and smoothies and drink it day in and day out in the name of immunity. Similarly, belly binding, the practice of belly binding was seen as, like a corset, just to cinch up your waist and make it look like very 36, 24, 36, that hourglass figure. So I wanted to put a note that, the sari, or the cotton sari, or the normal belly binding, and use of moderate pressure, and don't go crazy. And the reason why we belly bind, I went on to explain why do we belly bind, rather than, it's not just to get, to look like Kim Kardashian. That's not why you're belly binding. There is a scientific reasoning for that, and I explained it in simple terms. So I was not skeptical about how is it going to be received by urban women, for the simple reason that we're all very confused. Karna hai ki nahi karna hai? Somewhere I'll read we have to do it. Over here I'll hear I do not have to do it, or vice versa. And we're all a bunch of confused people. All Indian urban mothers, we are very confused. Kiski baat sune? Should we listen to should we listen to the grannies? Should we listen to the internet? And ultimately, internet always wins. We tend to listen to the internet more, and we were really missing out on a lot of Indian traditional wisdom. It is a lot of wisdom, and I have not just gone and generalized Indian traditional wisdom as being the end all and be all of care of the mother after childbirth. I have also spoken about practices which are harmful for the mother, like restricting water intake, which I have seen in many cultures where they just ask you to drink milk and no water is allowed to the mother, because the milk, the breast milk, will get diluted. That is one practice, and that gives terrible constipation to the new mother. So, such practices, I had to speak against these practices. So, Indian tradition, as we call it, is not always right, nor is it always wrong just because it is coming from someone who is less literate than you, who is less educated than you. Wisdom is something that gets passed on, and knowledge is something that can get passed on and stands the test of time. Whereas the fads that we see on the internet, they do not even last a decade. You could take the example of diets. They keep changing. It's like fast fashion. It's like the Zara collection. It keeps changing. So I wanted to do my bit to put an end to that, where women are experimenting with their bodies. We have become like guinea pigs, and we really don't know what is good for us, what is not good for us. So it was a little time, it was about time that somebody, put up a little of medical backing and science backing to all these practices, and gave it that perspective.
Right. Thank you. So now we are running out of time. So there's just one final question that I have for both of you. If there was this one thing that you could tell women who are about to embark on a journey of motherhood that they should absolutely know, but you feel that the society doesn't let them know it, what would that one thing be? Uh, Zehra, you can go first.
Okay. So I think that what I would tell a woman is that it's okay to feel conflicted at times. Even though you're going to be happy, even though you're going to have moments of a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure, there are also going to be moments of discomfort, self doubt. There are also going to be moments where you're going to feel really tired, really exhausted. You're going to wonder about what your future is going to be like. And it's okay, that doesn't make you a bad person. So it's not going to be, no matter how much you love your child, it's not always going to be the same. It's not a static thing. It's going to be up and down, and it's okay to acknowledge your feelings, to understand that there is some pain involved, but there's also joy involved, and it's a mix of both. Because what I really wanted was for people to acknowledge my pain, not to be dismissive of it, because everybody was being dismissive of what I was going through. So what I really wanted was acknowledgement. So what I would say to someone who's embarking on a journey of motherhood is that it's okay to have these kind of feelings at some points of time, to not always be overjoyed. And it's absolutely okay to want other things besides motherhood. It's absolutely okay to want to have a career. It's absolutely okay to want to be successful in other aspects. And it's absolutely okay also to want physical intimacy very quickly after childbirth. Also, it's absolutely okay to love your partner and still be a romantic, because all of these things were dismissed for me. So I would tell a woman that it's okay, and motherhood is an important aspect of your life, but it's not the be all and end all of everything. It's okay to want a lot of other things besides that. That's what I would say.
Farah, your thoughts?
Yeah, somewhere along those lines, yeah, I completely agree with what Zehra said. In addition, I wanted to ask mothers to stop comparing themselves and their children
Mm.
to others. Stop comparing your own milestones, like, whether you were able to breastfeed or not, whether you were able to bounce back or not. Don't compare your successes and failures to others. You can get inspired from others. You can have a like-minded support group, but do not compare yourself. So if you feel Instagram or Facebook or anything is getting you down, just uninstall it. It is not worth knowing what other people are putting on their totally filtered feed. It's really not worth it, because that is just the tip of the iceberg that you're seeing. Nobody's life is that rosy or that filtered. And the other thing is, do not compare your child also, in terms of milestones, in terms of how chubby he is, how fair he is, or how dark he is. And not just when the child is a baby. As the child grows, that is one of the most harmful things you can do to your own child. Even when the child goes to school, do not compare your child. That is the comparison is where insecurities breed, and you are always living in a very in an imaginary race that is just happening in your head. It is not there in the real world. So, adding on to what Zehra said, completely agree with what Zehra said. And please do not compare yourself to other people. Their lives are not what they projected to be on social media.
So true. Thank you so much, Zara, Farah, and Farah's baby for gracing us with her presence. It was lovely to have you all here. Thank you for joining She the People, and please keep watching for more such interesting conversations.